When my sister asked me to babysit her kids, I didn't expect her husband to show and confess that he was planning to leave her. But the worst part was when he slipped and revealed that she already knew, and they had been using me as a pawn in their divorce game without caring how much pain it would cause me. I convinced it was just babysitting when I agreed to watch Emma and Jake's kids every Thursday night. My sister Emma had been stressed about work, her marriage to David seemed rocky, and I thought I was being the supportive little sister. But somewhere between helping 7-year-old Lily with homework and getting 3-year-old Mason ready for bed, I started looking forward to those evenings for all the wrong reasons. David would come home from his late shifts, exhausted but grateful, and we'd talk while the kids slept. Just talk. That's what I told for 3 months. The first time David touched my hand while thanking me, I should have pulled away. Instead, I let his fingers linger on mine for just a second too long. The guilt hit immediately, but so did something else. Something that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in my 2-year relationship with Marcus. David was everything Marcus wasn't: attentive, present, interested in what I had to say. When he looked at me, I felt seen. When Marcus looked at me, I felt like furniture. I started wearing lip gloss on Thursday nights, then mascara, then the dress that made my waist look smaller. David noticed. The compliments started small. "Look nice tonight." Or, "Emma's lucky to have such a beautiful sister." I ate every word like I'd been starving for years. Maybe I had been. The night everything changed, Emma was working late again. She'd been pulling 12-hour days at the law firm, chasing a promotion that never seemed to come. David arrived home around 9, and the kids were already asleep. We were sitting on the couch sharing a bottle of he'd opened, when he said it. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." I asked what he meant, but I already knew. The way he looked at me when he said it told me everything. "Emma and I, we're like strangers living in the same house," he continued, moving closer on the couch. "She doesn't see me anymore. But see me." His hand found my knee, and this time I didn't pull away. This time, I put my hand over his. The kiss happened so naturally it felt inevitable. Soft at first, then desperate. Like we were both drowning and had found each other in the dark water. When we broke apart, I should have left. Should have grabbed my purse and walked out of that house and never looked back. Instead, I whispered, "The kids are asleep upstairs." We had on Emma's couch under the blanket she'd crocheted during her maternity leave with Mason. David's wedding ring caught the light from the TV, but I ignored it. I ignored everything except the way he made me feel wanted, needed, important. For 45 minutes, I wasn't the little sister who lived in Emma's shadow. I wasn't the girlfriend whose boyfriend forgot our anniversary. I was the woman David couldn't resist. Afterward, he held me like I was precious. Like I mattered. "I've wanted this for months," he whispered against my hair. "I've thought about every night." The words should have horrified me. Instead, they made me feel powerful. I went home that night and lay in bed next to Marcus, who was snoring with his mouth open, completely oblivious to the fact that his girlfriend had just destroyed her family. The guilt was there, sharpened, but it was overwhelmed by something stronger: the addictive rush of being wanted. Of being chosen. Even if it was in the shadows, even if it was wrong. David had chosen me over Emma. The next Thursday I went back, and the Thursday after that. We developed a routine. I'd put the kids to bed, David would come home, and we'd fall into each other like magnets. We told ourselves we weren't anyone. Emma was always working anyway. The kids never knew. We were careful, we were discreet, we were living in a fantasy. 3 months into our affair, David started talking about leaving Emma. Once things settled down at her work, he'd say. "Once the kids are a little older." Always once, never now. I believed him because I needed to believe him. I needed to think that this wasn't just about, that he actually loved me the way I was falling in love with him. The first in our perfect little bubble came when Lily started acting out at school. Emma called me crying, saying the teacher thought Lily might need counseling. "She's been having nightmares," Emma sobbed into the phone. "She keeps asking if Daddy is going to leave. I don't know where she's getting these ideas." I made the appropriate sympathetic noises while guilt clawed at my chest. Even a 7-year-old could sense that something was wrong in her world. But I pushed the guilt down. I had to. Because Thursday nights were the only time I felt truly alive. David would hold me and tell me I was beautiful, that I understood him in ways Emma never could. He'd trace patterns on my skin and whisper promises about our future together. I was an addict, and he was my. The breaking point came on a Thursday in November. Emma had to work late again and I was at their house as usual. But this time David came home. Not tipsy, not relaxed, but stumbling, slurring. The kids were already in bed when he walked through the door, reeking of whiskey and something else I couldn't identify. Desperation, maybe. "Sarah," he said, my name thick on his tongue. "We need to talk." Something about his tone made my stomach drop. He wasn't looking at me the way he usually did, with that mixture of desire and tenderness that made me feel special. He was looking at me like I was a problem to be solved. "David," I said, standing from the couch. "Maybe should just go to bed." "No," he said, grabbing my arm harder than necessary. "We need to talk now. About Emma, about the divorce." My heart jumped. This was it, this was him finally choosing me, choosing us. "Okay," I said, settling back onto the couch. "What about the divorce?" David laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was the sound of something breaking. "Emma knows, Sarah. She's known for weeks." The world stopped spinning. "What do you mean she knows?" "I mean she knows about us, about what we've been doing. She hired a private investigator." He pulled out his phone and showed me photos. Photos of us kissing in the doorway. Photos of us through the living room window. Photos that made my affair undeniably, brutally real. I couldn't breathe. Why didn't tell me? Why didn't she say anything? That's when David smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on his face. "Because she's been playing the long game, baby. She needed evidence for the divorce. She needed me to look like the bad guy so she could get full custody and leave me with nothing. But what about us? What about leaving her for me? David's laugh turned cruel. Leave her for Sarah, we're never the point. We're just convenient. Emma and I have been planning this divorce for months. She wanted out, I wanted out, but we needed to make it look like it was all my fault. Made that easy. The room tilted. Everything I thought I knew, everything I'd believed about our relationship, crumbled in seconds. Use me, we both used, David said, and there was something almost apologetic in his voice. Almost. Emma suggested Babysit. She knew developed a little crush on me. She thought if she gave us enough opportunity. He shrugged. She was right. I felt sick. Actually physically sick. She said this. My own sister set me to have an affair with her husband. It was the perfect plan. David continued, oblivious to the fact that he was destroying me with every word. Emma gets to be the wronged wife. I get to be the repentant husband who made one mistake. And well, get to be the homewrecker who seduced her sister's husband. The betrayal hit me in waves. First David, who had never loved me, had never planned to leave Emma for me. Then Emma, my own sister, who had manipulated me into destroying my own. They had played me perfectly, and I had been so desperate to feel wanted that I'd walked right into their trap. The kids. I whispered. What about Lily and Mason? David's expression hardened. What about them? They'll be fine. Kids are resilient. But I knew better. I'd seen the way Lily looked at me lately, like she knew something was wrong but couldn't name it. I'd seen how Mason clung to Emma when she came home late, like he was afraid she might disappear. These kids had been living in the wreckage of their parents' marriage, and I'd helped create that wreckage. I stood on shaking legs. I'm leaving. Sarah, wait. David reached for me but I away. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. In a few months this will all over. Emma and I will get divorced, I'll find someone new, and we can all move on. Move on. I stared at him in disbelief. Think I can just move on from this? Think Emma will just forgive me? Think those kids upstairs will just forget that their aunt helped destroy their family? For the first time that night, David looked uncomfortable. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. I said, grabbing my purse, and Emma played a game, and I was the pawn. But those kids upstairs, they're collateral damage, and so am I. I walked out of that house knowing I'd never be welcome back. Knowing that my relationship with Emma was over. Knowing that I'd have to tell Marcus the truth and watch him look at me like I was a stranger. Knowing that Lily and Mason would grow thinking their aunt was the woman who helped break their parents' marriage. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my phone buzzed with texts from David, then from Emma. I didn't read them. I didn't want to know what lies they were telling me now, what other ways they planned to manipulate the situation. I was done being their pawn. When I got home, Marcus was exactly where I'd left him on the couch, watching Netflix, completely oblivious to the fact that his girlfriend had just had her imploded. He looked when I walked in, and his smile faded immediately. Sarah, what's wrong? Look like I've seen a ghost. I sat down next to him and took his hand. It was warm and familiar and everything David's hand wasn't. We need to talk. I told Marcus everything. Every Thursday night, every moment I'd chosen David over the man who'd loved me faithfully for 2 years. I watched Marcus's face change as the truth spilled out of me: confusion, disbelief, and finally, a kind of cold disgust that made my heart break all over again. With sister's husband, he said when I finished. His voice was flat, emotionless. While we're babysitting their kids. Marcus, I know how it sounds. Do. He stood, pacing to the window. Do know how it sounds, Sarah? Hurt, because it sounds like been living a double for months. It sounds like every time came home from babysitting, been another man. It sounds like made me look like a fool. The worst part was that he was right. I had made him look like a fool. Heard, while he'd been planning our future, talking about moving in together officially, maybe getting a dog, I'd been planning my Thursday nights with David. While he'd been working overtime to save for a vacation he wanted to surprise me with, I'd been betraying him in the worst possible way. I never meant for it to happen, I said, but the word sounded pathetic even to me. But it did happen, Marcus said, turning to face me. For months, this wasn't a mistake, Sarah. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a choice made over and over again. He was right, and that made it so much worse. I could have stopped after the first kiss. I could have stopped after the first time we had. I could have stopped any Thursday for 3 months. But I hadn't. I'd chosen David every single time. I thought he loved me, I whispered. Marcus laughed, but it was bitter and sharp. He was using Sarah, and let him use to destroy his marriage while destroyed ours. I know that now. He told me tonight. They planned this. They used me. So what? Marcus's voice rose. So what if they used, still chose to cheat, still chose to lie to me, still chose to have an affair with sister's husband while babysitting their kids? Don't dare try to make the victim here. He was right again. I wasn't the victim. I was the woman who'd destroyed 3 relationships and traumatized 2 children, because I'd been too selfish and too desperate to feel wanted to think about the consequences. Leaving me? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus looked at me like I was a stranger. I'm leaving. Sarah left me months ago, just forgot to mention it. He went to the bedroom and started packing. I followed him, watching him fold the shirts I'd bought him, pack the books we'd read together, take down the photos of us that had been on his nightstand. 2 years of our together, reduced to 2 suitcases and a box. Where we'll go? I asked. My brother's. Then I'll find my own place. He didn't look at me. I'll come back for the rest of my stuff when not here. Marcus, please, can we talk about this? Can we try to work through it? He stopped packing and turned to face me. Work through what, Sarah? The fact they've been cheating on me for months. The fact that they've been lying to my face every single day. The fact that we're so desperate to feel special that destroyed own family. I made a mistake. Made a series of choices, he corrected. And now get to live with the consequences. He finished packing in silence. I sat on the bed we'd shared and watched the man I'd taken for granted walk out of my forever. At the door, he turned back once. I hope it was worth it, he said. I hope those Thursday nights were worth losing everything. But then he was gone, and I was alone in an apartment that suddenly felt enormous and empty. I called in sick to work the next day, and the day after that. I couldn't face the world knowing that everyone would soon know what I'd done. In a town this small, secrets didn't stay secret for long. Emma called me Saturday morning. I almost didn't answer, but I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. We need to talk, she said without preamble. I don't have anything to say to Pine. Well, I have plenty to say to Pond. Her voice was cold, controlled. The voice she used in court when she was destroying someone's case. Meet me at Mom and Dad's in an hour. Emma, I don't think. 1 hour, Sarah. Or I start making phone calls. She hung. I knew what that meant. She'd call our parents, our aunts and uncles, our cousins. She'd tell them her version of the story before I could explain. Not that my version would sound any better. I drove to our parents' house with my stomach in knots. Emma was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with Mom and Dad. Their faces told me everything I needed to know. Emma had already talked. Sit down, Sarah, Dad said. His voice was disappointed in a way that made me feel 12 years old again. Sister told us what happened. Mom said she wasn't crying but her eyes were red. Is it true? I looked at Emma, who was watching me with a cold smile. She'd won. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted, the perfect victim narrative. The wronged wife whose husband was seduced by her own sister. It's more complicated than that, I said. Is it? Emma leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty simple. Had an affair with my husband while babysitting my children. Set me, I said. And David both admitted it. Planned this whole thing. Emma's mask slipped for just a second, and I saw something vicious underneath. I suggested babysit because I thought I could trust my sister. I never told to sleep with my husband. She was lying and we both knew it. But she was also right. Whatever game she and David had been playing, I'd made the choice to participate. I'd made the choice to betray her, to betray Marcus, to betray those kids who'd trusted me. Right, I said quietly. I did sleep with David, for 3 months, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything, Emma said. Sorry doesn't undo the damage done to my children. What about the damage I've done, I asked. What about using own sister to get evidence for divorce? What about manipulating me into destroying my so could get what wanted? I didn't manipulate into anything, Emma said smoothly. I gave opportunities and made choices. Bad choices. Mom and Dad were looking back and forth between us like they were watching a tennis match. They didn't know what to believe, but it didn't matter. The facts were simple. I'd had an affair with Emma's husband. Everything else was just details. I think should leave, Dad said finally. Dad, I think should leave and not come back until figured out how to fix this. How am I supposed to fix this? I asked. Emma's divorcing David anyway. Marcus left me. What am I supposed to fix? We're supposed to fix, Mom said quietly. We're supposed to figure out how became the kind of person who could do this to people she loves. I left my parents' house knowing I might never be welcome back. The drive home was a blur of tears and anger and self-pity. But underneath all of that was a growing realization they were right. I had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could lie to the people she loved, who could use children as cover for an affair, who could destroy relationships for the temporary high of feeling wanted. The next few weeks were the loneliest of my phone stopped ringing. My friends, most of whom were also Emma's friends, stopped calling. The few who did call wanted details, gossip, the inside story of the scandal. I stopped answering. Work was a nightmare. Emma had apparently told a few select people who in confidence, which meant that by Monday morning everyone knew. My boss called me into her office and suggested I might want to take some personal time. The suggestion wasn't really a suggestion. I spent my days in the apartment that felt too big without Marcus, scrolling through social media and watching my disappear. Emma posted pictures of family dinners I wasn't invited to. Marcus changed his relationship status to single. Our mutual friends started out without me. The worst part was seeing Lily and Mason. Emma would bring them to the grocery store or the park, places she knew I might be. The kids would wave at me, confused about why Aunt Sarah wasn't coming over anymore. Lily asked Emma once, loud enough for me to hear, why doesn't Aunt Sarah babysit us anymore? Did we do something bad? And Emma's answer was swift and brutal. Aunt Sarah made some bad choices, sweetie. Sometimes when adults make bad choices there are consequences. A 7-year-old shouldn't have to learn that lesson from her aunt's infidelity, but that was the world I'd created. 3 weeks after Marcus left, David showed at my apartment. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, desperate. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old attraction. Then I remembered what he'd told me that night, and the feeling died. Sarah, thank God you're here, he said, pushing past me into the apartment. Emma's trying to take the kids. She's using the affair as evidence that I'm an unfit father. An unfit father, I said. Used children's babysitter to get evidence for divorce. That wasn't supposed to happen, David said. The plan got out of hand. But we can fix this. We can tell them the truth, that Emma said it. We can. We can what? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. We can admit that Emma manipulated me into having an affair so could get divorced. That makes us all look worse, David, not better. So what am I supposed to do? Just let her take my kids. Those kids care so much about. Traumatize them. Lily's having nightmares. Mason's clingy and anxious. Both use them as props in divorce game. I never meant for them to get but they did get. And so did Marcus. And so did I. So did everyone except Emma, who got exactly what wanted. David left after an hour of trying to convince me to help him Emma's custody battle. I couldn't. Those kids deserved better than parents who'd manipulate and use their own family members as pawns in their games. But they also deserved better than an aunt who'd help destroy their sense of security and trust. They deserved better than all of us. A month after the affair ended, I got a letter from Emma's lawyer. A cease and desist order, telling me to stay away from Emma, David, and the children. I was legally from seeing my own niece and nephew. The letter cited emotional distress and inappropriate conduct around minors. Reading it, I realized this was Emma's final move. She wasn't just taking David's children away from him. She was taking them away from me too. I called a lawyer of my own, but she was had an affair with sister's husband while babysitting their children. No judge is going to look favorably on that. If I were, I'd comply with the order and hope sister doesn't decide to pursue more aggressive legal action. More aggressive legal action. Emma could destroy me completely if she wanted to. She could my career, my reputation, my future. All she had to do was make the details of the affair public. The fact that she hadn't yet felt more like it than a mercy. I was trapped in a prison of my own making, and every day the walls got a little smaller. 6 months after my world imploded, I was a ghost haunting my own. The cease and desist order meant I couldn't contact Emma or the kids, but it didn't stop me from driving by their house sometimes, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lily and Mason playing in the yard. It was pathetic and probably illegal. But I couldn't help. They were the closest thing to children I'd ever had, and now they were forbidden to me forever. I'd moved out of the apartment I'd shared with Marcus and into a studio across town. It was all I could afford after taking a demotion at work, my boss's suggestion. After the affair became office gossip. The walls were thin and I could hear my neighbors fighting, laughing, living their normal lives while mine disintegrated. Marcus had blocked me on everything, but I still checked his social media through accounts. He was dating someone new, a kindergarten teacher named Jenny who looked like the kind of woman who'd never betray anyone. In their photos together, he looked happy in a way he'd never looked with me. Relaxed, like he could trust again. I'd given him that gift by leaving his. The few friends who still talked to me did so with careful politeness, the way'd treat someone with a contagious disease. Our conversations were stilted, full of subjects we couldn't discuss: Emma, the kids, Marcus, my future. Everything important was off limits, leaving us with small talk about weather and work and nothing that mattered. My parents had instituted a don't ask, don't tell policy. They'd see me for coffee once a month, but we never talked about Emma or the grandchildren they saw every week. During these visits I could feel their disappointment radiating off them like heat. I was the daughter who'd embarrassed them, who'd given the family gossips ammunition for years. The worst part was the silence from Emma. No angry phone calls, no confrontations, no screaming matches. Just the cold, hurt professional removal of me from her and her children's lives. It was more devastating than any tantrum would have been. She'd me out like a tumor, cleanly and completely. I started therapy, partly because I knew I needed help and partly because I hoped it might look good if Emma ever decided to press charges or pursue a case. Dr. Martinez was kind but relentless in forcing me to examine my choices. Keep talking about how Emma and David manipulated, she said during one session. But at what point do you take responsibility for own actions? I do take responsibility, I protested. I know what I did was wrong. Because every story tell me positions as a victim. Emma said David used, Marcus didn't appreciate, parents are disappointed in. When do you become the protagonist of own story? I am the protagonist, I'm the one who destroyed everything. No. Martinez said gently. We're still making the victim, even in destruction or passive, or the woman things happen to, not the woman who made choices. She was right, but admitting that meant facing something I'd been avoiding for months. I wasn't a good person who'd made a mistake. I was a selfish person who'd made selfish choices and only felt bad about them when I faced consequences. The realization came to me on a Thursday night in March, exactly 1 year after my first night with David. I was sitting in my studio apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and watching Netflix, when it hit me I missed the affair more than I missed Marcus. I missed feeling wanted. I missed feeling special. I missed the thrill of the secret. The rush of doing something forbidden. I missed David's hands on my skin and the way he looked at me like I was irresistible. I didn't miss Marcus's steady love or reliable presence. I missed the chaos and the drama and the feeling of being chosen. That's when I knew I was broken in a fundamental way. A good person would miss the man who'd loved her faithfully. A good person would regret innocent children. A good person would be devastated by the loss of family relationships. I was devastated, but for all the wrong reasons. I called Dr. Martinez the next morning and told her I needed to stop therapy. I don't think I'm fixable, I said. Why would say that? Because I missed the affair more than I missed the people I lost. Because even knowing what I know now, part of me would do it again. Because I'm not actually sorry about the cheating. I'm sorry I got caught. There was a long pause. Sarah, recognizing that is actually progress. Can't change what don't acknowledge, but I didn't want to change. That was the horrible truth I finally faced. I didn't want to become the kind of woman who was satisfied with quiet love and steady relationships. I wanted to be wanted desperately, dangerously, completely. I wanted to be the kind of woman men would risk everything for, even if it meant destroying families and traumatizing children. I was selfish and broken, and in therapy wasn't going to fix that. Some people are just wired wrong, and I was one of them. A few weeks later, I ran into Emma at the grocery store. It was the first time I'd seen her face to face since that day at our parents' house. She looked good, thinner, more confident, like divorce agreed with her. She was with Mason, who was now 4 and didn't recognize me. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the produce section. Then Emma picked Mason and walked away without a word. But not before I saw something in her eyes that made my freezy satisfaction. She'd won completely and she knew it. That night, I drove by their old house and saw the sold sign in the yard. Emma and the kids had moved somewhere I'd never find them. David was living in an apartment complex across town, seeing his children every other weekend under court supervision. The family was scattered, and it was my fault. My fingerprints were on the destruction of everything they'd built together. I started dating again, mostly through apps where I could lie about my past. I told men I was recently single, that my last relationship had ended amicably, that I was looking for something serious. But I wasn't looking for something serious. I was looking for someone else's husband, someone else's boyfriend, someone else's forbidden fruit. The pattern was always the same. I'd meet a man who was already taken. And I'd convince he was unhappy, that his relationship was already over, that I was doing him a favor by giving him a way out. I became an expert at spotting men who were looking for excuses to cheat. There was Tom, who was engaged to his college girlfriend but claimed they'd grown apart. We had an affair for 2 months before he decided to work things out with his fiancée. There was Kevin, who was married with a newborn and told me his wife didn't understand him anymore. That lasted 3 weeks before his guilt consumed him. There was Jake, who was living with his girlfriend of 5 years and said he was planning to leave her but needed time. Each affair followed the same script: intense attraction, passionate beginnings, promises about the future, and then the inevitable end when they chose their real relationships over me. Each time, I told I'd learned my lesson. Each time I fell for the same lies I'd fallen for with David. But I never got the same high I'd gotten from that first affair. Nothing compared to the thrill of betraying Emma, of being chosen over my own sister. The subsequent affairs were just sad attempts to recapture that feeling. After Jake went back to his girlfriend, I looked in the bathroom mirror and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Hollow eyes, brittle smile, the kind of desperate beauty that screamed damage. I was 30 years old and had become the other woman professionally. It was the only role I knew how to play. That's when Emma's final move came. I got a call from my boss on a Friday afternoon. "Sarah, we need to talk. There's been a complaint filed against." The complaint was detailed and devastating: inappropriate conduct with married colleagues, creating a hostile work environment, unprofessional behavior. Emma had documented everything, every affair, every inappropriate relationship, every boundary I'd crossed in my desperate attempt to feel wanted. "I'm sorry, Sarah," my boss said, "but we're gonna have to let go." I cleaned out my desk that afternoon while my coworkers whispered. Emma had destroyed my career as efficiently as she destroyed everything else in my. And the worst part was, she was right to do it. I was a liability. A woman who couldn't be trusted around other people's relationships. 2 years after the affair that started it all, I was unemployed, alone, and unemployable in my field. Emma had moved on, remarried a nice lawyer from her firm, and from what I heard through family gossip, was happier than she'd ever been with David. The kids called their stepfather Daddy, and had seemingly forgotten they ever had an Aunt Sarah. Marcus was engaged to Jenny, the kindergarten teacher. They looked perfect together in the engagement photos that showed on my Facebook feed. Stable, trusting, whole, everything I'd never been and never would be. David had also moved on, dating a woman from his work who didn't know about his past. I wondered if he'd told her about me, about what we'd done. Probably not. Men like David were good at compartmentalizing, good at pretending their mistakes had never happened. I was the only one still living in the wreckage of that Thursday night 2 years ago. I was the only one who hadn't moved on, who couldn't move on, who was still addicted to the chaos I'd created. My parents had finally contact completely after my job situation became family gossip. The last conversation I had with my mother, she said something that haunts me: "I don't know who anymore, Sarah. I don't know who've become." The truth was, I'd always been this person. Emma's manipulation had just given me permission to show my true self. I was the woman who would destroy a family for a few hours of feeling special. I was the woman who would traumatize children for the thrill of a secret affair. I was the woman who would betray everyone who loved me for a chance to feel wanted. I wasn't a victim of circumstance or manipulation. I was just selfish, and I'd finally found the perfect opportunity to prove it. Last week, I saw Lily at the mall. She's 9 now, tall for her age, with Emma's confident walk and David's stubborn chin. She was with Emma and her stepfather, and she looked happy. Genuinely, completely happy in a way I hadn't seen since before I destroyed her family. She walked right past me without recognition. I was a stranger, a woman who'd briefly existed in her and then disappeared. All that trauma, all that damage I'd worried about, and she'd moved on completely. Kids really are resilient, just like David had said. But I'm not. I'm still frozen in that moment on Emma's couch, still chasing the high of being chosen, still destroying other people's relationships in a desperate attempt to matter to someone. I'm 32 now, and I've become exactly what Emma always said I was: the woman who destroys families. The apartment I live in now is in a different state, where nobody knows my story. I have a job as a waitress at a restaurant where married men sometimes eat lunch alone. I watch them the way a predator watches prey, looking for signs of vulnerability, cracks I can exploit. I know I should feel ashamed of who I've become. I know I should want to change, to be better, to find some kind of redemption. But the truth is simpler and more horrible than that. When discovered capable of destroying everything touch, sometimes the only honest thing left to do is keep hands exactly where everyone can see them.